This is the demonstration video for the Scottish shortbread cookies. Cooking principles. 1. Made using the modified cake method. The conventional cake method is as follows. Step 1. Cream fat with sugar. Step 2. Beat in egg and any flavorings. Step 3. Alternately add dry ingredients with liquid ingredients to creamed mixture. Dry, liquid, dry, liquid, dry. But this cookie is made using the modified cake method with no altering step. So unlike the cake, we are only going to be adding in flour, not alternating with a liquid like milk. This makes the cookie dough more stiff and less liquidy like a cake batter. Cooking principle number 2. Example of a rolled cookie. Cookies are classified according to the way they are formed. There are 6 types of cookies. 1. Bar or sliced cookies are made in a rectangular cake pan and sliced into pieces after they are baked. Some bar cookie examples would be a brownie, a blondie, or even the classic Canadian example of the Nanaimo bar. 2. Drop cookies. Drop cookies are made from a dough soft enough to be placed by spoonfuls on a cookie pan. This kind usually spreads during baking, so space must be allowed to prevent them from touching. A popular variety of a drop cookie includes chocolate chip or oatmeal raisin. 3. Mold cookies. Mold cookies are made from dough a little stiffer than either a bar or a drop cookie. This dough is usually molded with the fingers to produce a desired shape and then placed on the pan for baking. Examples of a mold cookie can include the peanut butter cookie that's pressed with a fork, the rolled oat cookie that's shaped with the hand, or even the thumbprint cookie where you press your thumb into the cookie and put a piece of jam after it's been baked. 4. Refrigerated cookies. These are usually made from a stiff cookie dough and then formed into a long roll and chilled for several hours until the fat has become very firm. Later, you use a sharp knife to cut them into thin slices. We usually find these kind of cookies in grocery stores sold as convenient items. They're good when you want to make cookies at a later time. 5. Rolled cookies. Rolled cookies are formed by rolling a chilled stiff dough on a lightly floured surface. When the dough is cut with various cookie cutters or even a knife to make a desired shape, they are baked and then afterwards decorated with bits of fruit, nuts, or even icing. Examples of rolled cookies can be our shortbread cookies or even sugar cookies. 6. Pressed cookies. They're usually made from a rich, stiff dough that has been packed into a special cookie press. Then they're forced through shaped discs onto an ungreased cookie pan. The shapes and sizes vary by changing the discs and pressing out more or less dough to form each cookie. The most classic form of pressed cookies known as the spritz. Our shortbread cookie today is an example of a rolled cookie. Here we roll out the dough onto that lightly floured surface and then pick a cookie cutter that we would like to cut our cookies into. Nutrition. Cookies are high in simple carbohydrates, usually because of ingredients such as all-purpose white flour and sugar. Carbohydrates are responsible for supplying the body with energy, sparing protein, and assisting the utilization of fats. Cookies are also high in fat, usually because they're made from butter or margarine. Fat helps protect your body and insulate body parts such as major organs, supplies energy to your whole body, transports fat-soluble vitamins such as A, D, E, and K, and supplies your body with essential fatty acids needed for functioning. Ingredients. 250 milliliters of all-purpose flour. Flour will provide structure for our cookie. Gluten is the protein found within flour that, when combined with a liquid, will form strong elastic strands. Heat from the oven will harden this protein, creating the structure for our cookie. 125 milliliters of butter. This solid fat will act as a tenderizer, for it interferes with the development of gluten, giving our cookies a soft, chewy texture. Traditionally, unsalted butter is used because you can control the amount of salt in a cookie, which enhances flavor, but it can be overpowering in something that's this delicate, and we want the rich, buttery flavor to be more pronounced. 65 milliliters of berry sugar. Sugar not only sweetens our cookies today, but will help provide the golden brown color on the edges only as the sugar caramelizes in the oven. We're using berry sugar as it's made up of finer crystals that instantly dissolve when creaming the butter. Therefore, we will not have a gritty texture. And those are the 3 and only ingredients for the Scottish shortbread cookies. Equipment. For this recipe, you will need measuring equipment, including liquid, dry, and small measures, metal spatula, custard cups, a metal spoon, a medium mixing bowl, electric mixer, rubber spatula, a sieve, metal pie plate, a rolling pin, a pastry mat, cookie cutters, a cookie sheet, oven mitts, hot mat, a lifter, and finally, a cooling rack. Method. Bachette stands for the beginning steps that you need to do at the start of your lab. B stands for books and bags. They should be away either at the back of the classroom or under your table. A stands for apron, which you need to put on to help protect your clothing. S stands for sleeves. You need to roll them up past your elbows. H stands for long hair that touches the shoulders that needs to be tied back, or hats that need to be removed. C stands for chairs that should be tucked under your table and out of your way. H stands for hands that should be washed properly for 30 seconds using hot water and soap. E stands for equipment, which you should be getting out as quickly as possible without wasting time. And T stands for the towels that you need to pick up. You need at least 2 dishcloths and 2 tea towels. Step 2. Use oven racks 1 and 3. Preheat oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 150 degrees Celsius. Shortbread is the type of cookie that remains uncolored even when still thoroughly baked. Baking at a lower temperature will make sure that this happens. Also, and when your cookies are chilled, baking at a lower temperature will make sure the cookies will not melt before the starch has a chance to set up, resulting in misshapen cookies. Step 3. In a medium bowl, cream butter with an electric mixer until soft. Gradually add berry sugar and beat until creamy, approximately 5 minutes. This is the first step of the cake method. Beating the sugar and the fat together will add air to the mixture. Besides air, there is no other leavener. Make sure your butter is at room temperature when you're making your batter. Incorporating hard butter will result in overworking the batter, and this detracts from that fluffy, tender quality that we want in a shortbread cookie. However, do not use melted butter. This will also make your cookies too tough to eat. Creaming the butter well with the sugar before adding in the flour will make sure that the flour is only mixed a little, which helps keep the cookies tender because the gluten has not been overactivated. Make sure you scrape down the bottom of the bowl with a rubber spatula, and this makes sure that you can hear the sugar if it's still not been dissolved yet. It will make a scraping sand sound. Then use your rubber spatula to help mix it up again and continue mixing with the electric mixer until everything is creamy and smooth. Step 4. Sift and then measure flour. Sift again 2 more times, trying to add as much air as possible. We sift flour for 2 reasons. 1, to remove lumps that might be found within the flour. We live on a coastal climate that's full of moisture in the air, and our flour tends to lump up. We need to remove these lumps so they do not affect the texture of our cookies. The second reason why we sift our flour is to add in extra air particles within the flour. This will act as a leavening agent, a very minimal one, not the same as baking powder and baking soda, but what happens is the air becomes trapped within the protein matrix of the gluten. When it's put into the oven, the heat will cause these pockets of air to expand, causing it to lift up or leaven a little bit. And because our cookie contains no other leavening agent, air is the only thing we have to help leaven our cookie and make it rise. Step 5. Add flour, dry ingredients, 1/3 at a time to the cream mixture, mixing well after each addition. Third step of the conventional cake method is to alternately add dry and liquid ingredients to the cream mixture, but we only have dry ingredients in this recipe. Hence, we're using a modified cake method. Now we want to follow the conventional cake method when adding the flour. It helps us with a couple different things. Number 1, when we turn on the electric mixer, it makes it so all the flour doesn't fly out of the bowl, creating a giant mess for you to clean up off your counter. And the second reason why we want to make sure we add it a little bit of a time is it'll make sure that you do not over-mix the batter with the electric mixer, and you will stop yourself when the flour is just combined. It is important that we do not over-mix because that will activate the gluten, causing a really tough, hard cookie. Step 6. On a lightly floured counter, knead dough until the mixture can be rolled. Do not work dough too long or fat will begin to melt and become difficult to handle. Add only extra flour if necessary, or too much will be added to the recipe and the dough will be crumbly. The best tip I can give students is to make sure you do not overmix the dough with the electric mixer. In fact, you can undermix it and leaving it in a crumbly-like state. When you start to knead your dough, the warmth from your hands will keep melting the butter and combine the rest of the ingredients together. What we don't want to do is overwork the dough, and you'll know you're doing this because the dough will become a sticky mess. I like to knead the dough on a pastry mat. If you don't have one, a lightly floured countertop works just as well. Remember, to knead the dough, you need to push down, fold in half, and turn the dough. Keep doing this until the dough becomes a Play-Doh-like consistency, where it's soft, slightly stiff, but not sticky. Step 7. Roll dough to a 1 centimeter or 1/2 inch thickness. At this stage, if you're finding your dough is too sticky, you can always put it into the fridge to help chill and firm up the butter before rolling. But if your dough is a nice texture, you can start rolling on either a lightly floured countertop or a pastry mat. You need to make sure you flour your rolling pin. The dough will start to wrap and stick around the rolling pin, and we do not want that to happen. Make sure you do not roll your dough too thin. The dough will not actually leaven and puff up higher than what you roll it out as, so keeping a 1 cm thickness or 1/2 inch is ideal for this type of cookie. Step 8. Cut with floured cookie cutters. Cut cookies as close as possible to each other to prevent too much re-rolling and kneading. Gluten in the flour will become too tough when the dough is handled too much. It is very important that the first batch of cookies that you cut out of the dough is as close as possible. We want to make sure we don't have to work this dough too much. And if you notice the dough is starting to warm up, you can always pop it in the fridge to re-firm up the butter. Be gentle when rolling, and again, try to cut the next batch of cookies as close as possible. I find using a metal spatula to help lift the dough up to transfer to the cookie sheet works very well, keeping the original shape. Keep cutting until you get down to the end, and with the last little bit of dough, I'm going to shape the cookie with my hand until it's the right shape. Step 9. Place on an ungreased cookie sheet. Once all your cookies are transferred to the cookie sheet, make sure they have space around them for air to flow. Dough that is high in fat, like shortbread, often can be pricked before baking. This creates holes with vents for steam to come through and prevents the cooking from billowing or changing its shape. Use a fork or a toothpick to dock the dough. This is completely optional, but I do find for a lot of students, this helps keep your shape intact. Step 10. Bake for 25 to 30 minutes or until edges are just starting to brown. Shortbread does not need to be golden brown. They are pale in color. Err on the side of caution and go for the lower time. Also, if your cookie sheet is well seasoned and a darker color, it will absorb more heat and need lesser time than the 25 minutes. If you have a bright, new, shiny cookie sheet, it will need more time. Step 11. Let cookies cool 2 to 3 minutes on the cookie sheet, then transfer to the cooling rack to cool completely. When the cookies come out of the oven, the fat makes them super soft, and if you try to move them right away, they will just bend and break. You need to let the fat cool down so the cookie solidifies and is more solid for transferring to the cooling rack. Only leave them on there for about 2 to 3 minutes. If you leave them any longer, they will continue to cook and burn the bottoms of the cookies. And again, we only want a small golden brown color on the bottom edge only. The yield for this recipe is 6 to 12 cookies or 9 to 18 cookies for a group of 3. This all depends on your choice of cookie cutter. Test for doneness. 1. Edges are just starting to brown. Remember, the cookies are super pale. You will only see a slight browning on the bottom edge only. Take a look at this one. Standards. 1. Tender, crumbs easily. This means you didn't overwork your cookie. Overhandling the butter too much will cause the fat to melt and make the gluten activate, causing a really hard, crunchy cookie. Shortbread should be soft, melt in your mouth. 2. Lightly brown on edges only. This means you took care to keep your oven temperature very low. Also, that you did not keep it in the oven for too long of a time. That you still had enough time to let it sit on the cookie sheet and firm up the 2 to 3 minutes without causing it to burn further on the bottom of the cookie. Remember, should be pale. 3. Rich butter flavor. This means you didn't add too much flour into the cookie. You also had a chance to melt the sugar into the cookie properly so that you're not tasting the sweetness of the sugar, but rather the flavor of the butter. These are all the standards for the Scottish shortbread cookies. Let's take a look at my demonstration cookies. When you can see on the top is a very pale off-white color. The edge is slightly golden brown, an almost off-white color. You see it on both sides, and also the cookie has a nice thickness. When I turn over, the bottom of the cookie has a lovely golden brown color. It is not burnt from being left on the cookie sheet for 2 to 3 minutes. Again, you can see the difference in color between the pale cookie on the top and the slightly golden brown edge. The thickness should be proper. Again, a 1 centimeter thickness or ½ inch should be about the width of your pinky finger. That is a good shortbread cookie. These deliciously crumbly cookies are actually very easy to make. With only 3 ingredients, this shortbread recipe will have you enjoying cookies in no time. I hope you enjoyed watching our demonstration video. Happy baking, and thanks for watching.